morning folks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Many of you might be wondering, why is he outside in December wearing a t-shirt? And that is a very good question. What I'd like to do is to draw your attention to the t-shirt I'm wearing, which is specifically about mental health issues for motorcyclists. And this basically just ties in with the video that I released last week when I attended at the NEC, the exhibition centre in Birmingham, on the 7th of December when I went down there. Whilst I was looking around the stands and so forth and the exhibitors, I came across one particular exhibitor who's registered as a charity, and they specifically focus on mental health and suicides amongst motorcyclists. And I found that quite intriguing, the fact that whilst there are many charities out there who deal with such matters, anxiety, depression and mental health, I found this particular charity, who focuses specifically on motorcyclists, to be quite unique. I certainly never come across anything like that before. I was having a chat with one of the ladies that was on the exhibition. I'm not sure whether she's staff there or whether she's a volunteer, whatever, but she was interested to hear what I had to say, and likewise I was interested to hear what she had to say. And I've got some literature from her, and I'll put some details and some links down in the description below, and I'll also put something on screen with their details. But from what I can glean from looking at their website and from what I've taken from the conversation I had with her, they, as I said earlier a few seconds ago, they do focus specifically on motorcyclists, which is quite unique, and also a good opportunity for bikers to know that when they do get in touch with this charity, they're speaking to somebody of like-mindedness and who will possibly relate to things that they go through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a little ride in a moment because I'm getting quite chilly. And whilst we're riding, I'll have a little chat with you, tell you a little bit about myself, and let you know why it's of interest to me, and how a past career that I had affected my mental health, and the impact it had on other things such as my life, family life and so forth like that. So that's what we're going to do. It's not going to be a deep video or anything like that. It's not going to be too intense. Some of you may find it uninteresting and you might have already switched off, and if you have, fair play to you. But for those that this video might interest, perhaps you're suffering, or you think that you're suffering from some form of depression or anxiety or other underlying mental health issues, it may be of interest to you. And at the end of the day, if it just prompts one or two of you to get in touch with this charity or any other charity, or even your GP, and to seek some external professional help outside perhaps your family network, then that's a good one, a good win for me. So I'll just go turn the camera off, I'll get my camera gear packed away, and we'll go for a little ride and we'll have a chat. Okay, speak to you in a moment. All right then, let's go. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself then, and hopefully that will link in to the introduction I've just done there. So in my former life, before I retired last year in 2020, I worked for one of the larger northern police forces, and during my career within that particular police force I undertook many different roles, one of which was being a roads policing officer, roads traffic officer, whatever you want to call it. And I was immensely proud when I qualified to be a road traffic officer. It's a very intense course, tests you both psychologically and for you, obviously, your skills in driving and various other aspects of life. You have to undergo a intense, well in our case certainly a 4-week advanced driving course. You do a 2-week law course on the road traffic law and so forth, and only if you have the skills to drive and also the mental attitude to cope with that style of driving and so forth, will you qualify as a road traffic officer? I did qualify, and I served for a few years as a road traffic officer with the force that employed me. One aspect of the job that you can never, in my opinion, train for or have any sort of input on that's going to benefit you is how to cope with dealing with a road fatal, if you like, a death that's occurred within the roads and which you may attend. And whilst I've got quite a bit of experience of dealing with potential fatals and that type of thing, there's one aspect of a fatal which will, if you're human, in my opinion, really tug at your heartstrings and really screw your mind up. And in my case, that was a situation where I had to deal with a child fatality, something I'd never had any experience of when I was sort of, if you like, under the tutorage of the chap that was training me when I got back to the division. And at the time, you crack on with it, you deal with it, and you deal with it very professionally, as you would expect. But later, sometimes much later, it hits you like a brick in the face. And in my case, I'm not going to go into any specifics about the case or anything like that, or about the incident, because A, that would be very distressing for people watching this video, and I'm still not numb to it. It would be very distressing for me as well. But I can talk about it a little bit more now than I used to do, or be able to do a few years ago. But to cut a long story short, I didn't speak to anybody about it. Like a lot of people, I suppose, you put a brave face on, a bit of bravado, and you give the impression that it hasn't had any impact on you or effect on your well-being, when in fact it's obviously the total opposite. And I can distinctly remember going to the scene of the accident the following day, as I was instructed to do so by my traffic sergeant. You put out the usual signs, you know, appealing for witnesses and so forth. And whilst I was there, I noticed that there were some family members of the deceased child at the precise scene of the fatal accident, and they were putting out things like flowers and teddy bears. And I just sat there in the police car, possibly 100 yards away, giving them the privacy that they deserved, quite rightly. And I just sat there in the police car, and I can remember now, I just bawled my eyes out, and that was a release for me. That was the first time I'd cried since the incident, and I think that was a trigger point for me where it should have told me that the incident had affected me more so than I thought, but it didn't. I didn't tell anybody, didn't tell my wife, didn't tell anybody at work, and we just got on with it. And there's a analogy, if you like, at work, especially when you deal with a lot of traumatic incidents, and I've heard other police officers refer to this, where it's like you have a rucksack on your back, and any traumatic, horrific jobs that you go to, because you don't have time to process that incident and you don't necessarily get debriefed from it, you put it in your rucksack to deal with it at a later date. But the problem is you never get time to deal with it at a later date, and so consequently, over the days and the weeks and the months and the years, your rucksack gets quite full and very heavy, and it's a burden to you. And carrying all that weight round in your mind, as opposed to actually physically being on your back, it starts to play games with you. It will trouble you, and it will, if you let it, destroy you. Now, I was a fool to myself in some ways, in the fact that I suspected for many years after the event, after the incident, that I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I was frightened, I was anxious to seek assistance, because there was always, in my opinion, a stigma attached to people who suffered from mental health issues. I've seen it myself, unfortunately, at work, where some officers would mock people who were affected by mental health issues, and I always felt that if I highlighted myself as potentially suffering from a mental health disorder, PTSD, or just depression, then I would be put in the same box as they would be, and that I suppose people wouldn't want to talk to me, they wouldn't want to associate with me, that type of thing. So I kept it under wraps for over 10 years, and all the time it was festering away inside me. And in sort of late 2019, early 2020, as I was sort of leading up to my scheduled retirement day at work, I dealt with a few jobs. I wasn't on traffic then, but I dealt with a few jobs that I just couldn't believe how they'd been dealt with and how they'd been let down. Members of the public had been let down, and I started to speak out about it. I suppose you get a bit of a backbone when you're about to leave, and you're not really bothered what people think of you because you go in, and I think that's where I was. And I was also obviously stressed out with other things in regards to this incident from over 10 years ago, because they would constantly replay in my mind like a very short movie clip. I could visualize my attendance at the scene, and that would play over to me, and it would used to upset me. It still does now, to be fair. But yeah, that's how it was for me, and I never sort of sought any help for it or anything like that. And as I said, as a consequence, it ate me up inside. So yeah, long and short of it is that back end of 2019, early 2020, there were a couple of incidents at work where I just kept breaking down at work in tears. I couldn't cope with the stress that I was under, and in the end I ended up going off sick in January 2020, and the same day that I did, I approached my GP, and thankfully they were extremely switched on to mental health and so forth. I got a referral through them, and in no time at all, I think it was about 2 weeks, if that, I got my first appointment with a counsellor through my GP. And I can only say that they were fantastic. The counsellor that I was speaking with, suspected immediately from what I said and what I relayed to her about the incident and how it had affected me, that I was more than likely suffering from some form of PTSD. And subsequently, as the counselling sessions continued and I was assessed, then indeed it was confirmed that I was diagnosed with, officially diagnosed with PTSD. I had some counselling sessions, and then unfortunately obviously COVID kicked in, and we continued to have face-to-face sessions, and then the sessions that I were having had to revert then to online sessions, and then it was identified that those weren't appropriate for the level of illness that I had, so they had to stop. So I haven't had any counselling sessions since probably mid to late 2020 because of COVID. I've chased that up since, and unfortunately we're still not in a situation where that can resume back to face-to-face. However, I have a coping mechanism. I like to get out on my bike. That's a good coping mechanism for me. It gives me a chance to sort of de-stress and just sort of chill out, get my head together, get my thoughts together. And likewise, even putting these videos together, editing them, and then getting the satisfaction of creating something, a finished product, which hopefully people will like. But I do them for me specifically, and then obviously I do them for my subscribers and other people that want to watch the videos, and if they do enjoy them, that's brilliant. That gives me a boost, and that's nice. But yeah, I've got dogs, I'm married, I enjoy family life, and in particular I enjoy also taking my dogs out, going for a walk. That was immensely helpful to me, especially last year, 2020, during the lockdowns, and this year as well, obviously 2021. But I used to love to go out for an hour or so with my dogs up on the moors and just have a walk around and just relax in your own space. You can talk to the dogs, as daft as that might sound. You know, you can tell them all your troubles and they haven't got a clue what you're talking about. They'll love you regardless. So the purpose of this is really basically is that we're at a point now where imminently we might get into further lockdowns. The government might put further restrictions on us that could limit the amount of contact we have with other people or our movements. And you know, I'm not going to make this a political video or anything like that. At the end of the day, if that happens, it happens, and you know, you either abide by whatever laws or restrictions are put in place in your country or you don't. That's your decision, and I'm not going to influence anybody on that. But what I would instill in people and encourage people to do is, if you are or you find yourself in a situation where your contact with other people, family members, or perhaps a network of friends is suddenly put on hold for various reasons, then please do seek the assistance of professionals, whether that's through your GP or whether it's through Mental Health Motorbike, anything like that, or any other organisation that might be able to just offer you some support, somebody who you can talk to. I certainly found it much more helpful being able to talk to strangers than I could anybody else. I've never, even after all this time, even in over 10 years, I've never discussed with my wife the incident that has caused me to, in my opinion, have PTSD, because that would be selfish of me. It would affect her then potentially as it has me, and that's not what this is about. That's not what I hope to achieve. So that's the video today, folks. Very deep, sorry about that, but I just wanted to sort of make you aware of this charity that, as I said, I came across, Mental Health Motorbike. Details have been on screen throughout this video, hopefully, if I've done that correctly. Please give them a call if you think you need their help. You may not be aware that you are suffering from depression, but there are many telltale signs. If you have any suspicions whatsoever or any alarm bells that things I've spoken about, and you think to yourself, well, I'm like that, I often have those thoughts, then give somebody a ring, have a chat with them. Won't cost you anything, and it could be a turning point in your life. So all I can say, folks, is thanks very much for listening, thanks very much for watching. If you need, or you think you need help, don't hesitate like I did. Don't let it fester inside you for over 10 years or even shorter periods than that, because it destroys you. I wish to God that I'd done something years ago about it, but as I said earlier, you know, I always had this feeling that there was a stigma attached to mental health issues, and I genuinely don't think there is these days. So yep, that's it, folks. Really, I'm not going to labour the points, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Take care, everybody, and I'll catch up with you on the next video. Ta-ra for now.